One thing I like about the Raptor Bronco, you can make people in their Jeep Wranglers move over and get out of your way. Move over, peasant. You can't afford a real vehicle. That's how we do it. King of the road, baby. That's what we're paying for. After waiting for a year, I'm finally going to get a Bronco Raptor. Yay-hoo. Let's take a close look at the specs here. Well, I can't do anything with the price. It's not for sale. It's a factory VIP vehicle for important people like me. No safety ratings yet, although people who buy these, I don't think they really care. My. Look at that fuel cost. And I just got rid of an electric car, the Genesis GV60. That wasn't cheap to operate either if you plug it into the factory superchargers, but that's another video I've done. Won't talk about that here. I don't think people who drive off-road care about fuel economy that much. Alright, after doing some research, I finally got a price sheet. Starting at 68 grand, huh? Okay. 3 options we don't need. Carbon fiber pack, like that's going to make a difference on the weight of this 3-ton beast, and leather trim suede on off-roader. No thanks, but I had to take it here. And here's what the 3 options cost on top, and add shipping. And there you go. But you might have to pay more at the dealer, because at the time this video is done, there's still a waiting list. We also tested the standard Ford Bronco 2.7-liter V6 Badlands after it had 10,000 miles on the clock. We'll have a link for that video at the end of this video. Just go there and click and watch. We also did a video on the Ford Ranger trimmer. Even though I'm not a fan of Rangers, this was a pretty nice truck. Very impressive. We'll have a link for that too. So let's go to our test facility and storage locker and roll this Bronco out and see what it looks like. Pretty sharp looking. A real attention getter with that orange paint and giant tires, that's for sure. And we won't have to check and see if there's a spare tire with this one, because obviously there is. Yes, changing that by yourself would be a lot of fun. So what's the difference between the Raptor and the standard Bronco? Well, there's a lot of differences. The largest tires you're going to see in the standard Bronco are 33 inches. These are monster 37 inches mounted on 17-inch wheels. And a lot of the components on this Bronco come from the Ford F-150 Raptor. The spec sheet I read said it has the same brakes, the same basic Fox shock setup, retuned of course. And I've lost suspension components I can't see at the moment. And there's supposed to be 6 skid plates under there. Haven't crawled over to look yet. 4-wheel drive automatic for pavement, 4-wheel drive low and high for the dirt, 2-wheel drive high. And up here, your sway bar disconnect, your locking differentials. And this is the trail turn assist. Haven't tried any of those yet, especially the trail turn assist. And we have some other settings here. Everything's in the normal mode at the moment, but press a few buttons. The exhaust sound, Sport, Baja. Regardless of the setting, they all sound the same, just a bit louder. And they all sound like a sick vacuum cleaner, so I prefer to have it on the quiet mode. But we'll do the Baja mode just for you so you can hear what it sounds like. Then the dampers, off-road, normal, sport. We'll keep it normal for now. Steering, normal, comfort, sport. I'm not going to scroll through everything, but you get the idea. There are a lot of controls and settings you have in this vehicle. Learning curve. There are 3 engines available in the Bronco series. A turbo 4-cylinder putting out 300 horsepower, 325 pounds-feet of torque. Fuel economy 20 to 22 mpg. Then the V6 turbo, 330 horsepower, 415 pounds-feet of torque.
Fuel economy 18 to 19 mpg with regular tires, or 17 overall with the big 33 inches. We already did a video on that. We'll have a link for that at the end of this video. In this beauty, a 3-liter turbo, 414 horsepower, torque rating of 440. And you already saw the fuel economy numbers on the price sticker. Pretty much stuck around 15 mpg, if you're lucky. And you use premium fuel. With extra horsepower, you might think this is extra quick, and not necessarily, because with a 20% increase in horsepower, you also get about 20% increase in weight. I had up the math compared to the 4-cylinder Bronco. I think the difference is like 800 pounds, plus you have the rolling resistance of these giant tires, so you need all this extra power to get the vehicle moving. On the average, a Bronco V6 with standard tires to 0 to 60 around 6.5 seconds, and this is somewhere around the neighborhood of 6 seconds. Not that much difference. Let's take a quick look at the cabin. A nice large glove box. A grip handle. You will need this, trust me. A conventional stick shifter. Paddle shifters if you want to choose gears manually. With 10 gears, you have a lot of work for your fingers to do. Before we take this off our drive, a couple things to know. The doors are removable. The roof is removable, if you care to do so. I don't. This brings up a complaint a lot of other testers have been bitching about. The rattles that you get in this vehicle when you're going off-road, and suggesting it has to do with bad quality. Let me explain something to you guys. If you have a vehicle with a removable roof and removable doors, it is going to rattle and creak. That's the way it is. Get over it. If you don't like it, get a vehicle with a solid roof and doors that don't remove. That simple. And number 2, here's a tip from me to you. When you're driving a vehicle that's been raised, as far as suspension travel goes, everything's fine until you get a flat, and here you can run into some problems. The problem you can run into is while the jack might be tall enough to lift the vehicle, for standard tires, sometimes it's not tall enough to lift the vehicle with giant tires. Or even if it is, sometimes it's just enough to get the tire raised, and what happens if the jack starts sinking in the mud or sand a little bit? Now you got the tire off, you can't get it back on. I haven't tried the jack on this Bronco exactly to see if it fits, but either way, here's what I do and here's what I recommend. Here's a tip for you. If you're driving a Raptor or any other factory vehicles in race, or any vehicles in race, whether it's factory or not, I always carry a cement block like this around. Put the jack on top of the block. You don't have a ground clearance problem raising the vehicle. You're not going to sink in the mud or the sand. Saves you a lot of potential aggravation, and I speak from experience, trust me. This little $2 block can save you a lot of aggravation. This is an off-road vehicle we'll be taking in the dirt, but first we need to see how it drives on the street. Let's start with the power steering. Not much precision here, but basically it's a truck-like vehicle, and I don't think too many people are going to worry about that. It's quick enough. And none of the impacts are coming up through the steering wheel thus far. That's a good sign. So I don't think anyone's going to complain about this setup. And it can be adjusted for feel on the status bar, a sport mode, but I have it in normal mode right now. As we do in all our vehicles, we're going to take some mild speed humps around 15 miles per hour. See how the suspension performs an impact, but let's do like 25 miles per hour. This is a pretty heavy duty setup. I think you can handle it. Bump number 1. A little firm, but nothing uncomfortable. Let's drop it down to 20 miles per hour. You can feel the tires, but still the shocks do a good job absorbing the impact. Here's the nasty bump at 20 miles per hour. I felt a little bit, but nothing serious. Remember, we got giant heavy tires on here, so you're always going to feel something, but overall, reasonably comfortable. Like I said earlier, just because you have more power doesn't mean it's going to be quicker with all this weight. So we're going to do a 0 to 60 run. And if you're a bunch of Noahs, it's not the vehicle rattling. I have a bunch of gear in the back. And I'm going to turn the exhaust up to maximum so you can hear what it sounds like. Not very good in my opinion. It sounds like a sick vacuum cleaner, I think. I put the exhaust sound in maximum, called the Baja mode. It says for off-road only, no street use, but what the heck. Nice brakes, by the way. Let's see, in the past 47 miles of city driving, 11.9 mpg. And only have 213 miles left. Getting expensive to feed this baby. Put some money in my Patreon account. At highway speeds, the suspension is pretty comfortable. Yeah, you get a bit of bouncing around, but the suspension does a great job absorbing impact, so no complaints from me. On the other hand, yeah, there is the usual wind noise you expect for something shaped like a lunchbox, and there is some wind leaking through the windows and body parts, but certainly no worse than what you get off a cheap Wrangler, that's for sure. And the steering is far superior to the Wrangler, which has very dull, dead-in-the-middle steering. This, especially in the sport mode, is pretty precise and has no issues. Well, 75 miles per hour, 18.5 mpg, that's far better than what I was expecting. Time for ranch patrol. We're going to stop by the ranch house, pick up some supplies, and take this off-road. That's what it's made for, right? So let's go through the secret tunnel and be on our way. These shocks are very expensive, but worth every penny. You hardly feel a bump, regardless of how nasty it is. Well, we made it, but it wasn't easy. The road is totally gone from all the weather. Can't even see the trail, which means if you're out here after dark, you're going to get lost and not get out of here. Here's one problem. The mirrors are attached to the body, not the door, so if you pull the mirrors back, retract them, open the door, smack. Be careful. That means it's not going to beat you to death after 5 or 6 hours of doing this. But even the base Bronco with the 330 horsepower 6-cylinder and smaller tires is pretty comfortable as well. Yeah, just what I need on my road here. What's he doing here? Getting my Bronco dirty. The advantages with a Bronco, it's narrow, which allows it to fit in narrow trails, but you got these giant tires sticking out. You have a lot more width than you might think. So be cautious. You don't want to cut your tires. One thing I like about this Raptor setup, these tires and the weight distribution is so good, you really don't have to put it in four-wheel drive at all. About 85% of the time. Unless you're in deep sand, mud, or rock crawling, you get the idea. But for most off-roading, I just leave it in two-wheel drive. To where, if I had another vehicle, yeah, I might need four-wheel drive. The biggest test of a suspension is seeing how it performs on washboard dirt roads. With all these ripples, you can really tear up a front end and knock it out of alignment in a hurry. And normally on a road like this, I would have to drive slow, 15 miles per hour or so, but speed unlimited on this. Doesn't seem to be affected at all. Those nice Fox shocks again. And that's good because there's no guardrails on the side of this road. And a long cliff drop off. Wouldn't want to slide off, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. One good thing about turbocharged engines, they produce a lot of bottom end torque for climbing like this. The only other alternative is a diesel, and while diesel does perform well, they're kind of a pain in the butt to maintain. And fuel's not too cheap for those right now, so I'd be happy with a gasoline turbo. Even if you don't intend to drive like the Baja 500, one advantage of this Bronco Raptor is for normal 4x4 commuting, you're less likely to get stuck. And it's more comfortable to drive than the standard Bronco as well. And as I recall, there's a crawl control feature in here somewhere, but I never use those. I prefer to do it myself. The crawl control works better, but I just don't trust computers that much. If I can't do it with my foot, I probably shouldn't be driving, and neither should you. But you have a choice. Crawl control or yourself. Take your pick. On a road like this, narrow with an upgrade, this is where the paddle shifters and manual shifting comes in handy. Just lock it in second gear or third gear and just go right along without the 10-speed jumping up and down, swapping gears all the time. One thing I've observed when driving on nasty trails like this, the shocks or dampers, if you want to call them, work better in the normal mode. If you put it in the sport mode, the right is just too stiff, and the Baja mode, stiffer more. So overall, for most of my 4x4 driving, the normal mode seems to work better. I'm sure there are situations where the sport and Baja mode performs quite well, but I haven't found those yet. Given time, though, we might. And yes, when you get in the roughies, there are a lot of creaks and rattles around the bodywork, but as we mentioned before, if you want a vehicle with a removable roof, removable doors, it's just the price of admission. It's nothing to do with quality, it's just the way they're built and the way it'll always be built, and suck it up. Live with it. I definitely like this camera system. Works pretty good when you're going off-road. Gives you a nice 360-degree view over here on the right, and a good view of what's to your rear on the left. Yep, this happened yesterday. I'm glad I wasn't driving by when it happened. I put a dent in the Bronco and Ford would get mad at me. Well, a friend of mine wanted me to check on his house while I was up here, see if there's any damage from the flood they had last week, and I don't think he's going to be very happy. Go down to Home Depot, a couple nails and cardboard, be good as new. Now we're back on the pavement, and we've got some nice corners here, and actually this vehicle handles pretty good. Impressive for something that was designed to be off-road, not on it. Definitely not a sports car, but does quite well, actually. I'm sure these giant tires and stiff shocks have a lot to do with it. And you put the steering in the sport mode, that helps too. So at 328 miles of driving, that includes all conditions, highway, city, off-roading, 14.2 mpg. Not bad, really. Not bad at all, considering. So after a week of driving, what's my take on this Bronco Raptor? I'm just going to cut to the chase. Ford did everything they could to make this Bronco better with the Raptor package, and I can't find any complaints, aside from the fact it's kind of expensive to feed on the fuel tank. I usually don't give a 10 out of 10 on my ratings, but for me, 10 out of 10. What else can I say? If you didn't see our headlight test night drive video we did on YouTube, well, you can see it now in part 3. Now we turn out the lights on the outside. We can turn on the lights on the vehicle and see how they perform. And here's what we're going to see on the rear. Triangle. And here are the emergency lights. I see they're integrated in the taillights. Interesting arrangement. Have a yellow circle around the main headlight for the emergency lights. That's something new. But turning off the headlights, yeah, now we can really see it. Very strong. And the rear, definitely bright. Put the transmission reverse, and this is what we see. Lights up pretty good in the dark. Let's see what this does. Rear only. Okay. Each cluster looks pretty good in the dark. We can see the shift knob for the 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive system. Moving up, you cannot see the shift points on the transmission stick. They do not light up, but they do on the gauge, so you'll never be confused about what gear you're in. Now let's get to the headlights, and we're pretty high off the ground, so I suspect the lights should be high off the ground, and they're definitely above the bushes. That's good. Let's go to high beam. Strong in the middle. Not much of a spread. These are not the most potent bulbs I've ever seen. I would say above average. Nothing fantastic, but they'll do. So let's look on the dark, dingy street, and right now I have the low beams on. Turn the lights up. Low beams back on. High beams on. Again, strong down the middle. If you watch my videos, one thing I cannot stand on the vehicle are auto-dimming mirrors. One thing I do not want to do is drive in heavy city traffic with a blacked out mirror. It's not safe. It's dangerous. So if you give me a switch to turn it off, I'm happy, but apparently we don't have a switch to turn off the auto-dimming mirror. On some vehicles, you can do it by programming the computer system, but I can't find any way to do it. And since this is a prototype vehicle, I don't have an owner's manual, so apparently an auto-dimming mirror is what I'm getting. I'll just have to live with it. Although you can turn them off by putting a piece of tape over the sensor hole. I'll have to try that perhaps. So let's see how these lights light up the freeway signs. High beam, low beam. And down the ways. Lights up. Okay, let's do the dark, dingy street test. Low beam. High beam. Looks pretty decent to me. Still got the Christmas lights up, and it's almost February. Oh well. Not the most fantastic headlights I've ever seen, but more than adequate, I would say. Very good plus. It passed.